Amazing. Twist, millionaire mistakenly gets into wrong car, discovering hidden riches of kindness. Daniel Caldwell stepped out of his upscale office, the Texas sun blazing down as his mind hung heavy with the weight of a grueling week. His jaw tightened as he thought of soaring profits, ruthless client demands, and the hollowness that soaked his successes. In the vacuum of his wealth, a gnawing emptiness clawed at him, whispering that true satisfaction eluded him. That evening, fatigue clouded his judgment, driving him to a worn-out minivan parked just feet away. He tugged open the door, seeking a moment of respite. Instead, a wave of chaos smacked him, the faint scent of takeout, juice boxes littering the floor. Clara, a resilient single mother, instantly caught him off guard. "Do I know you?" she asked, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity dancing in her voice. Rather than retreat, he felt an instinctual pull to her kind expression. "I guess I'm lost," he muttered, yet found himself sinking into the frayed leather seat. A hesitant silence filled the car until Clara broke the ice, offering a ride in exchange for an awkward introduction. "I work 2 jobs. You didn't really think I just parked here to admire the skyline, did you?" Daniel chuckled nervously, the juxtaposition of their lives glaringly apparent. With each turn, he listened to her stories, her trials and triumphs, quelled by 2 fiery children who demanded her every moment. Daniel recounted the board meetings that plagued his week and the clients who hardly knew his name. He watched her demeanor shift as she recounted a community food drive she organized, recounting tales of kindness that sparked nothing but an echo of longing inside him. Tension in his chest mounted as he realized there was a stark contrast between their realities. Clara derived her strength from her struggles, and Daniel's glittering success felt increasingly transient. Doubts began to knot in his soul, lurking just beneath the surface like shadows that lurked in the fading twilight. Before they knew it, the park came into view. The laughter of children filled the air, and Daniel felt an odd warmth beckoning as they parked. Clara suggested he join her in mentoring the kids, imploring him to see how rewarding such connections could be. The sun dipped low, casting golden hues while she shared stories of her late father, an architect whose legacy shaped the town, a legacy of kindness and integrity. Suddenly, the thought struck him like a blow. The very structures that defined his life were born from the ideals Clara's father embodied. The irony hung in the air, reminding him that the legacy he was building felt empty and self-serving. A deafening silence loomed as Clara's revelation sank in, and Daniel fought against the swell of emotions, doubt, anger, yearning, each at war. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the conversation ended and Clara glanced toward her children, Daniel found himself engulfed by an intense internal turmoil. He realized that each word she spoke echoed hollowly against the noise of his self-indulgent aspirations. With an inexplicable need to act, he wrestled with the decision to redefine his life's work amidst the walls of comfort he had so carefully constructed. A world filled with profits, yet void of purpose. As the shadows deepened around them, Daniel felt a storm brewing within. Would he take the leap into a life entrenched in kindness, or retreat back into the sterile corridors of his successful but soulless existence? The uncertainty gripped him as he stood there, suffocated by the echo of Clara's father's legacy looming before him. Would he embrace the transformative road of connection or dissolve back into the same constraints he once had? The unresolved tension left his heart racing, the weight of a life-changing decision hanging precariously on the horizon. As the last rays of sunlight dipped beneath the horizon, Daniel stood at the precipice of a choice that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Clara's invitation to mentor the children snaked through his mind, igniting a flicker of curiosity intertwined with dread. The idea seemed absurd, a millionaire exchanging boardrooms filled with cutthroats for the laughter of children in a park? But something about Clara's passion and her father's legacy tugged at his heartstrings, beckoning him toward a path he had long ignored. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, weighing his options. Returning to the confines of his corporate empire felt comfortable, predictable. Yet within those walls was the gnawing dread that he was contributing nothing of substance. He could visualize the faces of colleagues in the polished conference rooms, the strategy-laden conversations swirling around him like a familiar but suffocating fog. The thought of dissipating into that routine again filled him with a sense of resignation. On the other hand, the world Clara painted through her stories was vibrant and unfiltered. Mentoring children? Supporting a community? The words felt foreign, almost like a different language lost amidst the meticulously curated lexicon of profit and loss. But as Clara spoke more about her community engagement, Daniel couldn't help but feel an ember of responsibility igniting within him. What if he could leverage his resources, his knowledge, to make a real impact? The thought collided with the fear of failing, of stepping into unfamiliar territory. As he contemplated this, he could feel Clara's understanding gaze pierce through him. "You don't have to decide now," she said gently, sensing his hesitation, "but this could change everything." And just like that, he decided to try. It was a small act, an agreement to return the next evening. However, in that moment, it felt monumental. The tension that had coiled around him began to loosen, replaced by a tentative hope. Clara's laughter rang in his ears, echoing with possibilities he hadn't dared to articulate before. The following days transformed. His mind began to simmer with ideas, ways to bridge the gap between his world and the children's. He researched mentoring techniques while still navigating the corporate battlefield. Deep down, a part of him yearned for solace amid the chaos, a feeling of purpose that transcended quarterly earnings. Daniel made a point of visiting the community center, where Clara led the kids in activities that bloomed with creativity, painting, reading, even cooking sessions. Each visit stripped away layers of his former self. The children, with their unguarded joy and endless questions, became a diverse canvas on which he could paint a different existence. Instinctively, he felt like a teacher, an educator not in a traditional sense, but in a way that ignited curiosity and compassion. Still, doubts would creep in, whispering insidiously that he was an outsider in this realm of selflessness, that he didn't belong. Moments of self-doubt flickered, questioning the very foundation of his motivations. Was he simply trying to prove something to himself? Or was he genuinely looking to give back, to forge connections? The gnawing emptiness he had felt for so long was beginning to subside, replaced with uncertainty over his intentions. The pattern of his life shifted gradually. More often, he found himself abandoning the suit and tie for comfortable jeans and t-shirts as he arrived at the community center, ready for another round of laughter and learning. And then came the day that would set everything into motion. As he worked with the children on a project that blended art with meaningful messages, a group of parents approached him. They shared their vision, creating a community event, one that could draw more families in and amplify the impact they were making. The moment hung in the air, heavy with implications. The idea of orchestrating something larger than himself sent a shiver down his spine. Could he truly see it through? His heart raced at the thought. The whispers of self-doubt swelled within him again, challenging his very essence. Was he truly capable of this? The question loomed over Daniel like a storm cloud waiting to burst. The time had come to face not only the nebulous contours of his new path, but also the depths of his true desire to contribute meaningfully. A decision was inevitable, but would he embrace it wholeheartedly, fully aware of the potential transformations that lay ahead? The provocation of change welled inside him, surging as the presence of Clara and her community enveloped him. Would he rise to the occasion, or would he falter under the weight of expectation? The answer remained perilously uncertain, poised at the tipping point of his newfound understanding. The morning sun filtered through the window, casting a warm glow over Daniel as he wrestled with conflicting thoughts. The coffee cup trembled in his hand as he replayed the parents' proposal in his mind. Organizing something meaningful was not just an extension of his recent journey. It felt like a leap into uncharted territory, a realm filled with uncertainty yet crackling with potential. Could he combine his corporate resources and experience with a genuine commitment to community impact? With Clara's enthusiasm echoing in his head, he took a deep breath. The stark contrast between boardroom strategies and nurturing creativity gnawed inside him. His former life, filled with metrics and bottom lines, began to feel insipid compared to the kaleidoscope of art projects and playful ideas. Yet, stepping into a leadership role among parents, children, and a world he had long observed from a distance sent fresh tendrils of anxiety curling through him. He arrived at the park, nerves pooling in his stomach. Clara was already there, animatedly discussing the plan with the parents. As he approached, her face lit up. It sparked a small spark of confidence within him, but as soon as he stepped into their conversation, that spark dwindled under a flurry of questions. What kind of resources should they allocate? What messages should they promote? Each inquiry wrapped around him like a vice grip, amplifying his self-doubt. He took a moment to observe the children, their laughter a gentle reminder of why he had set foot on this path. That laughter, starkly contrasted against the corporate clatter he had inhabited, ignited a sense of purpose. But the undercurrent of fear reminded him of the stakes. It would be on him to bridge those worlds. "No one expects perfection," Clara said quietly, sensing his hesitation. "Just be yourself. Your experience, your expertise can guide this." Her words sliced through his self-doubt, if only for a moment. Yet the inner critic bellowed louder. What could he possibly offer? Mentoring children brought a different skill set, one that demanded empathy rather than analytical prowess. He was painfully aware he had spent years navigating a world governed by performance, and here, amidst laughter and aspiring young artists, he found the rules profoundly different. As the discussion unfolded, he listened intently, allowing ideas to bounce around among parents and Clara. Gradually, a fragile outline of a plan began to solidify in his mind. He could leverage his organizational skills, creating a framework that preserved the authenticity of the children's voices while introducing structure. An idea sparked. "What if we included a workshop-style approach?" he suggested, his voice steadier than he felt. "Guided sessions where the children can express themselves freely while incorporating some themes from the community." A beat of silence followed, then nods of agreement and excited murmurs amongst the group. The initial idea blossomed in real time as parents added their visions and children chimed in with what they wanted to showcase. Daniel's doubts began to dissipate as he felt the energy of collaboration fill the air. Slowly, they sculpted an idea together, blending his business background with their community-centric approach. It wasn't just the outline of an event taking shape. It was a loud warning against his ingrained belief that his past had prepared him for only one type of success. He was rediscovering his capabilities, the multifaceted aspects of himself that could thrive in this new landscape. But just as exhilaration began to replace anxiety, his phone buzzed in his pocket, a reminder for an important corporate meeting. The unsettling reminder of his dual existence grounded him back in reality. The tension between his former life and his evolving role intensified, poised at a precipice he could no longer ignore. Where did he truly stand? Was he managing a project, or was he worth a pivot for something larger than himself? That call would pull him back into a world he had begun to find suffocating. The choice now loomed larger than ever. Would he commit fully to this newfound purpose, fully aware of the personal compromises it demanded? Or would the gravitational pull of his old life win him back? The sound of children laughing drew him back, electrifying his thoughts. But could he align his two worlds before they collided? As he turned to engage with the parents and Clara, a knot in his stomach twisted, foreboding the challenge ahead. Would he be enough to weave these disparate threads into a tapestry of meaningful impact? Daniel stood momentarily frozen, a heartbeat caught between two worlds. The park around him was vibrant, alive with the chatter of children and the warmth of parental camaraderie. Yet, a cold wave of anxiety washed over him as he felt the weight of expectation pressing against his back. "Daniel?" Clara's voice pierced through his reverie. She stepped closer, her brow furrowing with concern. "You okay?" He nodded, forcing the corners of his mouth to rise into a semblance of a smile. "Yeah, just thinking about everything." "Don't forget to breathe," she said lightly, trying to ease his palpable tension. With his heart racing, Daniel took a deliberate breath. The voices around him blurred into a comforting hum, grounding him in the moment. Still, the specter of that corporate meeting loomed triumphantly in the back of his mind, its demands threatening to erode these budding connections and ideas. "Let's run through our ideas again. I think we're close," Clara encouraged, gesturing for Daniel to join her at the small assembly of parents and children. As contributions flowed from the group, Daniel felt himself slipping back into an analytical mode, dividing thoughts into feasible action steps. He envisioned how each idea could weave seamlessly together, creating an accommodating framework that allowed space for creativity while maintaining an endpoint. "Why not set up a recurring schedule?" one parent suggested. "Weekly workshops could build continuity." "Yes, and we can facilitate regular showcases, reinforcing their progress," Daniel responded, riding the wave of enthusiasm from the group. A child, barely more than 7, brightened at the prospect and added, "And we can make art for the school. They love art." Daniel felt a thrum of excitement as they constructed this ideal, but it was layered with an unsettling undercurrent. The truth was, every word, every idea that flowed from him felt like an unspoken challenge to his past self. Could he truly adopt this role, flipping the switch from the calculating corporate strategist to a nurturing mentor? The approval in the parents' eyes was intoxicating, yet terrifying. What if he fell short? His fingers trembled at the influx of responsibility, both compelling and formidable. Hours passed, each minute blurring into the next as they crafted a framework that embraced spontaneity while threading in a sense of purpose. But as dusk approached, the golden light shifted to a cooler hue, casting shadows of doubt upon Daniel's resolve. As the meeting wrapped up and parents buzzed with plans for the next week, Daniel felt a tug of dread like a hand around his throat. His phone buzzed again, a reminder of the corporate meeting he had nearly forgotten amidst the retreat into creativity. "Hey, Daniel," Clara's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts. "You've got this. Your ideas are brilliant." He swallowed hard. The warmth of her support felt genuine, but how could it stand up against the cold, hard realities of his corporate obligations? Putting business on hold came with undeniable risks. What if he committed to this new venture only to be dragged back into a world whose discrepancies haunted him? "Thanks, Clara," he managed, masking his turmoil with gratitude. Walking toward his car felt heavier, each step echoing his uncertainty. He slid into the driver's seat, his body taut with conflicting emotions. The engine purred to life, but the thought of his corporate meeting yanked at something deeper within him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he contemplated his next move. He could cancel and risk losing credibility at work, or he could go and anchor himself back into the world of corporate minutiae, further severing the budding threads of creativity he had just begun to weave. He took a deep breath, glancing out at the park where laughter still danced in the air. That laughter felt like a lifeline, asking him to choose. In this flickering moment, he realized a truth that had been hiding in plain sight. He was not just a businessman, nor just a mentor. He was a bridge maker. And as he gripped the steering wheel tightly, he knew he had to decide which bridge he would cross. The moment of truth had arrived. Which path would he set forth upon? The engine hummed softly, a stark contrast to the tempest of thoughts swirling in Daniel's mind. He sat in the car, debating the dual narratives of his life that were pulling him in opposing directions. The park, with its life-affirming energy, stood behind him, while ahead loomed the cold, sterile boardroom that had been his domain for too long. He turned the key in the ignition, but instead of driving away, he let the car idle. Time felt suspended, as if the world outside had muted itself. The laughter of children, the chirping of birds barely punctured the bubble of his introspection. The corporate meeting was more than just an obligatory appearance. It was a dance with a familiar adversary, self-doubt. The weight of corporate responsibility felt suffocating, yet the allure of mentorship shimmered enticingly before him. Just then, a vision of Clara's encouraging smile flickered in his mind. Her encouragement had sparked something deeper within him, igniting a flicker of passion he had long buried beneath spreadsheets and strategy meetings. What if he truly could find a balance? What if he could forge a new path that straddled both worlds? The thought flirted with his consciousness, coaxing him toward a realm where creativity and commerce could coexist. With a new sense of determination bubbling up from his core, Daniel thought about the ideas that had poured from the group earlier. Each suggestion had resonated with him, a reminder of the uncharted territories of passion he had neglected. But jumping into this domain as a lead mentor meant engaging in uncharted waters that scared him more than he wanted to admit. Could he transform his analytical skills into a nurturing approach without losing the edge that drove his career? He reached for his phone to review the corporate presentation, hoping to conjure the same enthusiasm he'd felt at the park. But amidst the polished graphs and bullet points, he felt hollow. Numbers alone could no longer satisfy him. The artwork of children and their fervent energy lingered as an echo, drawing him back to the possibility of meaningful engagement. The juxtaposition felt jarring, driving home the fact he was at a crossroads, and each path carried its weight of potential. With a rush of clarity, Daniel recognized that he needed to redefine what success meant to him. It was no longer about climbing the corporate ladder as a solitary ascent. Instead, it could involve building communities, fostering connections, and inspiring creativity in others. Yet, the fear of judgment still nipped at his heels. What would his bosses think if he pursued this nurturing role with intensity? What if they saw a weakness rather than an evolution? He gripped the steering wheel tighter, the leather cool against his palm. It was a delicate balance of vulnerability and courage he needed to forge ahead. He visualized his potential, recognizing that embracing this new role wouldn't diminish his professional reputation. It could instead enrich it, blending the analytical with the artistic. Finally, Daniel made a decision. Mentorship was a leap of faith, but sometimes one must dive into the depths to discover uncharted territories of growth. He placed the car in reverse, preparing to leave the parking lot. But as he put his foot on the accelerator, his phone buzzed once more. It was a text from Clara. "Let's get together this week to discuss how to make the ideas work. I believe in you." Yes, he thought, with the right partnership, he could navigate this dual identity. But as he turned back toward the road leading to the park, a voice inside him asked, the corporate meeting would still be waiting for his input. Would he ignore it entirely? The phone buzzed again, pulling him back to reality. Was this his moment of truth? The real challenge lay ahead, choosing between the security of the corporate world and the uncharted potential of mentorship. He took a deep breath, realizing he wasn't just at a crossroads, he was on the precipice of transformation. As the car crept forward, the path wasn't clear, but one thing was certain. His journey was about to intensify. What awaited him on that other side, where both worlds intertwined? And would he have the strength to face any consequences that came his way? The revelation hung in the air, tantalizing and frightening at the same time. The tension in Daniel's chest tightened as he navigated the car back toward the park, each passing moment amplifying the chorus of conflicting emotions brewing beneath the surface. He had just chosen to embrace his burgeoning passion for mentorship, yet the looming boardroom still seemed to loom larger than life, a structure backed by cold decisions and the relentless ticking of the clock. As he pulled into a space near the entrance, he shut off the engine, but sat in silence, staring through the windshield at the playground alive with laughter and joy. Children climbed, swung, and explored, their uninhibited play sliding seamlessly between ambition and creativity. An unsettling feeling washed over Daniel. He was eager to engage, but fearful of stepping beyond the comfort that had sheltered him for so long. Could he, a mid-level manager tethered to productivity metrics and quarterly reports, truly become a beacon of inspiration for others? Clara's belief in him punctured his doubts, but could he translate that faith into actionable change? He stepped out of the car, the brisk air filling his lungs as he traversed the path toward the park center. It felt like entering another world, one that thrummed with possibility. Each joyful shriek from the children struck a chord within him. Was it foolish to chase after a dream that hardly fit the person he had constructed in the corporate world? Yet the thought lingered. What if the strain of conformity was ultimately leading him astray? The meeting was set for 2 hours from now, and amidst the blend of his reservations, excitement fluttered in his stomach. Mentorship could be a crucible for a new identity. With each step toward the community center, memories of past failures and successes danced through his mind. Would he allow his fears to dictate his future? As he approached the building, he caught sight of Clara, a bright presence amidst the muted backdrop of the corporate landscape. She stood to the side, a welcoming smile painted across her face, clutching a notebook filled with ideas. There was no pretentiousness in her demeanor, just an earnest wish to drive change forward. That air of determination mirrored his own longing for something more. As they greeted each other, he felt a wave of warmth wash over him. She exuded an energy that made him believe in the contagious impact of passion. Clara launched into a discussion about their shared vision for the upcoming mentorship initiative. Ideas cascaded between them effortlessly. She was fostering creative connections simply with her belief in the possibilities. But as the conversation deepened, doubts began to seep back in. What if he faltered in the moment where it mattered most? Would the young protégés see him as merely an analyst in disguise, stripping the role of mentorship of its organic dynamism? The dialogue turned toward a specific project intended for underserved youth, and it hit Daniel like a wave. It wasn't just an opportunity to lead, it was a chance to redefine success in a radical community of mentors and mentees. It could bridge the gulf of his past limitations, morphing them into a foundation of strength. What had once felt like an unbridgeable chasm began to appear less daunting. Perhaps he could integrate his corporate skills, transforming hard numbers into stories of triumph and connection. Across the table, Clara's words resonated deeply with him. The greatest impact comes from the places we least expect it, where vulnerability becomes strength. Daniel nodded slowly, processing the weight of her assertion. As they discussed details, a revelation struck him hard. He could draw from his corporate experiences to create a nurturing space for creativity and growth. This was no fleeting notion. It was a radical proposition to merge both identities into synergy. Yet, the gnawing question remained: how would he approach the corporate meeting later? The thought of his bosses evaluating his commitment to a vision fraught with risk generated a tide of anxiety. Would they permit this evolution, or would they see it as a deviation from what they had groomed him to become? Daniel felt the room spin, the intensity of options before him pulsing dangerously, each possibility demanding a decision. Would he continue to play it safe, or could he challenge the limits placed on him and take that brave step into unknown waters? The time had come for answers, but would he have the courage to show them the true potential of his dual path? As he prepared to dive deeper into their discussion, a new tension settled. This was only the beginning of a much more complex journey. Would his choice today reshape not only his future, but the future for many others? Without realizing it, he felt the crusade beginning to unfold at his fingertips, and the stakes had only just intensified. As the conversation unfolded, Daniel sensed a shifting tide within himself. The intensity of Clara's commitment ignited something dormant. Every idea they tossed around felt like a breadcrumb leading him deeper into a forest of potential he had long neglected. Yet, as exhilarated as he was, a knot formed in his gut, tightening with every acknowledgement of his fears. He couldn't ignore the looming boardroom meeting. The gravity of the corporate world, with its binds of conformity, suddenly felt suffocating. It was one thing to dream of mentorship and transformation over coffee with Clara. It was another to stand in front of his superiors and advocate for a path he wasn't entirely sure he could navigate. What if he spoke up, true to his new convictions, only to face ridicule? The doubt clawed at him with sharp, relentless fervor. Building his identity as a mentor felt monumental. But here, in the corporate landscape, he noticed all the wrong markers of success crowded around him like phantoms. Endless numbers, reports, and judgments. As they wrapped up their brainstorming session, Clara glanced at him expectantly. "How about you take the reins during the presentation?" she suggested, her eyes sparkling with encouragement. "It's an opportunity to set the tone for what's to come." Daniel's heart raced at the proposition. The very thought of standing up there, articulating a vision that required both personal vulnerability and professional courage, was terrifying. His mind spiraled into a labyrinth of possibilities: what he might say, how he would be received, the inevitable scrutiny. But then, amid the chaos of his thoughts, a whisper of clarity pierced through. Could he really infuse elements of mentorship into his corporate narrative? What if he framed it not just as a duty, but as an evolution of their roles? An opportunity to engage, inspire, and perhaps ignite a similar passion in others? The thought excited him, yet it carried an undertow of dread. Was he deluding himself with idealism? "Daniel," Clara's voice broke through his reverie, "are you with me?" His eyes met hers, and in that moment, he saw someone who believed in change. Someone who reflected the very potential he had been so afraid to acknowledge in himself. He took a breath, the air feeling thick yet charged with a newfound determination. "I think I can do it. I want to do it. But I need to prepare. I need to know how to present this in a way they'll understand." Clara nodded, her expression shifting to one of encouragement. "Let's work through some key points together. What if we shape the presentation to highlight not just the factual benefits of mentorship, but also the deeper emotional impacts on individuals and teams? That way, it resonates more." As they dove into the logistics, Daniel felt himself becoming increasingly energized. The prospect of merging his mentorship aspirations with his corporate responsibilities began to feel less like a burden and more like an exhilarating challenge. Yet, before he could fully embrace this growth, the clock reminded him of his impending corporate meeting, a harsh reminder that time was no ally. He would need to shape his narrative carefully, a delicate dance between ambition and authentication. But what if his bosses questioned not the data, but the very passion behind his message? What if they saw his shift as a deviation from the Daniel they had come to expect? Each thought spiral carried him deeper into a chasm of uncertainty. The moment for transformation lingered in the air, yet he felt the weight of expectation constrict his resolve. As they finalized their notes, Daniel felt the stakes intensifying. The choices ahead were fraught with danger, yet he yearned to take the leap. Would he silence the doubts that had held him captive for so long, or let them dictate his fate? The day was approaching when he would confront not just his bosses, but the very essence of who he wanted to be. One final thought burned brightly. Was he ready to embrace the reality that true change required both courage and authenticity? As the sun dipped lower, casting shadows long and deep, Daniel stood at a crossroads, sensing the volatility of the impending transformation. Would he step into the light or retreat behind the walls of comfort he had built? And then the realization struck. This was only the beginning of a much greater conflict, one that perhaps hit closer to home than he anticipated. Would he rise or ultimately fall in this newly defined role? The hours slipped by like grains of sand, and Daniel barely noticed the fleeting time. Each second dragged him closer to the boardroom, yet it felt as if the very air was thick with a charge of electrifying tension. He replayed the last moments spent with Clara in his mind, her excitement palpable as they strategized on articulating a vision where mentorship breathed the life into the sterile confines of the corporate machine. With every step towards the conference room, anxiety blossomed within him, pinching his gut like a vice. He paused just outside the door, a cold sweat trickling down his back. After all those years of adhering to the unwritten rules, each dictated by performance metrics and quarterly earnings, it felt absurd to entertain the notion that a gentle push towards mentorship could create ripples big enough to disrupt the culture. What if I fail? The thought spiraled uninvited into his consciousness. He could almost hear the mocking laughter echoing around him, the incredulous gasps of his colleagues questioning why he dared to challenge the status quo. Then there was Clara's voice, a gentle yet insistent nudge towards possibility. It's your moment to lead. Show them the vision. She hadn't just seen the potential in mentorship, she was convinced it was significant enough to change lives, both personally and professionally. But could he truly embody that belief? With a sudden burst of resolve, Daniel pushed open the door and strode into the boardroom, heart hammering against his ribcage. The room was a world of sharp suits and sharp glances, critical eyes assessing him the moment he entered. He cleared his throat, feeling the wetness of his palms as he stepped up to the podium. Front, vectoring his focus towards the gathered crowd rather than the corporate logos decorating the walls. "Good morning, everyone," he began, his voice tremulous yet honest. "Today, I want to talk about something that goes beyond the numbers on reports. I want to speak about mentorship, about cultivating an environment where we grow together, not just as professionals, but as individuals." Words began to flow, clumsy yet fueled by a blistering urgency to be understood. He spoke of the power of human connection, the transformations he envisioned sprouting from seemingly simple relationships. As he navigated through statistics, interspersed with heartfelt anecdotes, he could feel some expressions shift. A few eyes softened, as if they began to see the human elements buried beneath their corporate facades. But doubts lingered, gnawing at the fringes of his confidence. He maintained steady eye contact, fighting the urge to glance down at his notes, a prop that suddenly felt irrelevant. What if they countered with questions he couldn't answer? What if they rejected his vision out of hand? He introduced a project proposal, aware that once officially presented, any semblance of retreat would be impossible. Yet, as he shared his ideas for mentorship initiatives, pairing employees and encouraging growth through shared experiences, he felt chains falling away. Each sentence was not just a professional assertion, but an opening door, inviting perhaps even the cynics into a refreshing conversation. What if we all mentored just one colleague, he challenged. Imagine twice the creativity, twice the collaboration. It might just ignite a fire within people we never knew had so much potential. With that, he could see some frowns falter. His passion cracked the veneer of detachment, and he forced ahead, daring to bring vulnerability to a space traditionally filled with bravado. As he wrapped up, uncertainty gnawed again. Would they greet his vulnerability with warmth, or would it be met with icy dismissal? The tension in the room, once a grim wall, now felt charged with an energy he had not dared to hope for. But just as he gathered himself to entertain questions, a hand shot up from across the table. "Daniel," the voice cut through the moment's vibrancy, dripping in skepticism. "You're asking for a lot of change. What makes you think mentorship will make a difference here, in a place where results are all that matter?" The question hung suspended in the air, a challenge more significant than he had anticipated. The eyes that now awaited his answer were studying him closely, dissecting the authenticity behind the words he had just shared. This was it, his moment to carve out his conviction against the tide of transactional norms. A clash awaited, and he felt the pulsing heartbeat of the turning point looming larger. Would he counter this doubt with his convictions intact, or would he reaffirm their expectations of conformity? In that charged silence, the answer felt crucial. Would he rise against the tide and embrace this role, or would this moment define the boundaries of his potential? Daniel found himself at the precipice of his transformation, the full weight of the moment hanging heavily above him, teetering between what was expected and what could be achieved. And within that split second, he realized this wasn't just about mentorship. It was about facing the person he had long avoided. With renewed vigor, he stepped forward, ready to confront the challenge and whatever reality followed. But as he paused, heart pounding, one thought raced through his mind, heavy with implications. Was it merely the boardroom he had to convince, or the deeper doubts within himself? Daniel could feel the weight of expectation pressing down as he glanced around the room. The skepticism radiating from the attendees was almost palpable. He tightened his grip on the podium, taking a breath to steady his racing heart. This was not just a board presentation to him anymore. This was a reckoning. "The truth is," he began, his voice steadying, "I believe in the power of mentorship not just because I read about it or saw it work elsewhere. I believe in it because I've lived it. A few years ago, I was in a different role, overwhelmed and unsure of my path. It was a colleague who took the time to guide me, to help me discover my strengths." He watched as a few brows raised in curiosity, uncertainty morphing into intrigue. "What I learned then is that mentorship is a two-way street," he continued. "Feeling the initial thrill of vulnerability replaces doubt. It's not about merely giving or receiving advice. It's about building a network of support that elevates everyone involved. In our fast-paced corporate environment, we often forget that growth is not just about gaining knowledge. It's about fostering relationships that enrich our work lives. What do we lose when we forget the essence of collaboration?" He could hear softly murmured conversations among attendees now, a flicker of hope igniting a dialogue previously dominated by mistrust. Their eyes, once sharp as knives, were now taking deeper measurements of him and the potential he was opening up. But as he spoke, he could feel one set of eyes fixated on him. It was Jennifer, a senior executive known for her no-nonsense approach to business. She seemed skeptical still, lips pressed together in a tight line. He knew she would push back harder than the rest. "Let's be clear, Daniel," she interrupted, a hint of challenge in her tone. "You've made some compelling points, but we're in a world where numbers rule. If there are no immediate returns on investment, why should we bother with mentorship? What direct value can we measure?" It hit him squarely in the chest, the familiar fear of dismissal creeping back in. But he reminded himself he was no longer that unsure employee he once was. "I understand your concerns, Jennifer. Mentorship is not a quick fix. It's an investment in our future. Consider this. Companies that prioritize mentorship see higher employee engagement, reduce turnover, and increase innovation. The long-term benefits aren't just data, they're tangible experiences that create leaders." With each point he made, he felt an almost kinetic energy growing in the room, a foundation of risk shifting towards possibility. "But," he added, leaning into his conviction, "beyond numbers, it's about creating a culture where people feel valued and seen. I don't want to just build a hierarchy. I want us to craft a community where each person can thrive. And the question must be asked, is that not worth pursuing?" In that suggestion, Daniel caught the glimmers of something new, a flicker of possibility igniting in the eyes of some attendees. But it wasn't enough yet. There was more he needed to say, a deeper truth to uncover. "Look," he pressed, a tone of urgency woven into his words. If we continue down this path of viewing our colleagues as mere metrics, we risk losing the soul of our company. This initiative isn't solely about boosting profits. It's about investing in our people. It's about acknowledging our humanity where ambition dares to thrive. Wouldn't we all be better employees and people if we felt that what we do matters beyond numbers? A heaviness settled in the air, a tension electrifying the atmosphere. As attendees exchanged glances, he noticed some nodding, skepticism shifting to contemplation. But he also sensed Jennifer's discontent bubbling just beneath the surface, ready to unleash another wave of critique. Daniel felt his pulse quickened. He had presented his case, laid bare what mentorship meant to him, and illuminated its potential benefits. But the battle of ideals was far from over. Should he clarify his stance further, or gamble that this impassioned argument alone was enough to sway them? With uncertainty curling its fingers around him once more, Daniel braced himself for the response, wondering how far he was willing to go for a vision that still felt so fragile, yet so powerful. The ground was shifting beneath his feet, not just in the boardroom, but within the very core of his being. And as he awaited their reactions, one unshakable thought pulsed through his mind. How much will he have to sacrifice to transform not only the company culture, but his own identity? Daniel sat at the boardroom table, his heart racing as he surveyed the familiar yet daunting crowd. Just weeks ago, he had felt entirely consumed by corporate expectations, a prisoner to the numbers that dictated success. But today, standing on the precipice of transformation, he realized he had the power to redefine not just his life, but those around him. The challenge from Jennifer still lingered, her skeptical gaze fixing on him, but Daniel felt a surge of clarity in his convictions. He had fought against doubt too long, fought against the notion that he could weave the realms of business strategy and heartfelt mentorship into a coherent narrative. Today was about proving that both could exist in vibrant harmony. Let's consider this, Jennifer, he continued, his voice steady. It's easy to focus only on the bottom line. Yet, every robust organization thrives not merely on profits, but on its people. Our talent is our most valuable asset, and investing in their growth cultivates an environment where creativity flourishes. It generates loyalty that keeps employees engaged and eager to contribute. As he spoke, Daniel could see a shift in the room. The spark of a deeper understanding flickered in the eyes of his colleagues. They were not merely statistical blips on spreadsheet. They were human beings capable of growth, of crafting a richer narrative together. The very essence of mentorship began to creep into their conversations, which was a radical departure from the sterile corporate atmosphere he had always known. He offered anecdotes from his newfound experiences at the community center. Daniel recounted children's eyes bright with possibility, their laughter blending with their burgeoning confidence as they embraced learning environments. When we nurture potential in others, we infuse our own lives with vigor and purpose. Imagine the ripple effect. What if we invested time into supporting each other here in our office? The vibrancy might just awaken a culture of collaboration and innovation we didn't think possible. But the wind was still in motion. Daniel could sense the shifting tide. Jennifer leaned forward. And what does this look like in application? Theory is one thing, execution is another. What tangible guidelines do you propose that we act on? The bombardment of questions fueled Daniel's passion, igniting the fire that had been dimming for too long. Let's create mentorship pairs, foster workshops that encourage skill sharing, and implement co-creation sessions. I envision a mentoring program explicitly designed to connect employees across departments. Imagine the synergy that can form when we help each other succeed, unleashing creativity combined with experience. The energy in the room shifted palpably. He began to see nods of agreement, even smiles flickering amongst a few of his colleagues. No longer an outsider in their world, Daniel was carving a pathway for collective growth, an avenue where vulnerability became a canvas for innovation. His spirit soared as he embraced the realization of his transformation. As the meeting progressed, Daniel realized this was a pivotal moment, not only for him, but for the culture of the organization. They engaged in discussions that danced from practicalities to the emotional depth of mentorship, blending their corporate essence into something richer and more fulfilling. At the end of the day, as he stepped outside the boardroom, he could feel the air was lighter, filled with anticipation. He had not just spoken, he had ignited dialogues that had long awaited their moment. The familiar shadows of self-doubt had begun to dissipate like fog in the morning light. And then it hit him. The true victory wasn't merely presenting a proposal. It was the awakening that had sparked within himself. He had proven to be not just a manager, but a bridge builder, infusing heart into a realm he used to perceive solely through numbers. This realization emboldened him. A week later, he found himself back in the community center, lighter than before, vibrant with purpose as he saw his mentorship idea springing to life. Clara stood by his side, pride radiating in her eyes. "You did it, Daniel! You shifted the paradigm," she said, wrapping him in a brief embrace. His heart swelled. "No, Clara, we did it. This initiative is our joint vision, and these children have inspired my every step." As he watched a group of children paint a mural, each brushstroke vibrant with possibilities, they became living proof of his journey. Daniel had embraced his dual role, weaving the aspirations of his corporate life into the tapestry of mentorship. He forged connections through vulnerability, igniting change that unfolded every day in tiny yet measurable ways. Suddenly, there was a tangible weightlessness to Daniel's existence, a self-resolute affirmation that his life was infused not just with wealth, but with immense purpose. He had crossed the bridge, gathered the pieces of himself, and woven them into a new identity where business and heart coexisted triumphantly. In that moment of realization, he had stepped fully into the convergence of his two worlds, a role model for innovation and mentorship alike. His new purpose crystallizing around him like the vibrant hues of the mural behind him. This was not merely a victory over uncertainty. This was a celebration of achievement over the shadows that once quelled him. Daniel had not just chosen a path, he had redefined success in a way that resonated with who he had become, who he aspired to be. The sense of fulfillment washed over him like a balm. The time had come to share this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your insights matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand that your support shapes this vibrant community.